I returned home for the holidays and casually asked my daughter, "Did you get the letter I sent last month?" She looked at me hesitant, unsure. "What letter?" she asked. My hand stopped mid-air, still holding the stem of my wineglass. Across the table, my ex-husband cleared his throat. My stepson shifted in his seat. My name Emma wasn't even on the engraved place cards this year, just Nana. I didn't yell. I didn't ask again. I just smiled faintly and raised my glass as everyone began the toast. The dining room looked the same, candlelight flickering against the old oak buffet. I refinished myself 20 years ago, the silver from my mother's set polished to a dull shine, but something about the air felt thin, like the room had been stretched too far trying to fit people who no longer belonged together. "Cheers to family," said Brian, my ex lifting his glass. The others echoed, clinked, sipped. I touched mine to my daughter Lily's, but didn't drink. Then, as the laughter returned and the cranberry sauce got passed around again, Lily leaned closer. "They erased your legacy," she whispered, just above the hum of the dining room. I didn't react. Not outwardly. I just held her hand under the table. 10 words. That's all it took to crack the silence I had wrapped myself in for years. I had wondered why the emails about the foundation stopped coming. Why the website looked different when I checked it last month. Why the plaque I'd commissioned for the scholarship fund had vanished from the lobby wall in the building I once helped purchase. But I didn't ask. Not then. I thought maybe they were updating things. I thought maybe I was being paranoid. Now I knew I wasn't. Lily didn't elaborate. She didn't have to. The way she looked at me, quiet, steady, was enough. I looked around that table. My stepson Max was telling a story about the business trip to Chicago, how he closed a deal I'd helped draft years ago. The company used to be ours, mine and Brian's, until it wasn't, until the divorce, until the buyout. I let him keep it because he said he couldn't start over at his age. I thought I was being kind, or maybe I was just tired. My name had stayed on the board for a while. Out of courtesy, they said. For optics. But a few months ago, I noticed the email login stopped working. Then came the mail I never received. The silent shifting of names and titles and attributions. The pictures on the website no longer included me. The About Us section now credited Brian and Max as the founders. The scholarship? Now renamed after Brian's father. They didn't just rewrite the story, they cut me out of it. And tonight, as the sweet potatoes made their rounds, and Max laughed too loud, and Brian raised another toast, I realized something with a clarity that felt like frost on glass I had let this happen. Not because I was weak, but because I thought stepping back was the graceful thing to do. Because I believed that if I didn't make a fuss, they'd at least preserve the truth. They didn't. I looked at Lily again. She looked so much like me at her age. High cheekbones, alert eyes, always quietly observing. She had grown up watching me work 12-hour days, run payroll on Christmas Eve, host client dinners while nursing the flu, and now she was the only one who remembered. I gave her hand a light squeeze. She squeezed back. Across the room, Brian's sister was setting out dessert pecan pie from the store, not the one I used to bake, the one with the bourbon glaze. No one mentioned it was missing. I looked down at my plate, empty, and somehow I wasn't hungry anymore. The truth wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It whispered, like Lily did, when everyone else was too busy congratulating themselves to notice. They erased me. But someone remembered. When Lily was 6, she used to sit under my desk while I worked late, legs crossed, drawing crayon murals on printer paper. She called it quiet time. I called it survival. The office was the garage back then, half insulated, space heater under my chair, invoices taped to the wall like wallpaper. Brian said we'd never make it without outside funding. I said we didn't need anyone else. He said I was being unrealistic. I said I was being resourceful. For years, I was the one who handled the permits, filed the taxes, negotiated the vendor contracts while Brian networked over golf, and Max shadowed him like a golden retriever with a calendar. When the company hit its first million in revenue, Brian gave a speech at the holiday party. Thanked the team. Thanked Max. Forgot my name entirely. I smiled anyway. What else was I supposed to do? The partners were watching. The investors wanted unity. And I told myself, this isn't about credit, this is about legacy. But even then, something twisted in my gut. After the divorce, I let him keep the company name. Emma and Company became B. Harper Holdings overnight. I signed the papers, took the house and the silence. I thought I was being fair. I thought if I left gracefully, they would honor what I'd built. I didn't count on them rewriting the blueprints. Even before the company, I was the one who carried the weight. When Lily was born, I was the one up at 3 a.m., still nursing, still responding to client emails from a BlackBerry with a cracked screen. Brian said he couldn't help at night, needed rest for early meetings. Max had just turned 12 and needed structure, so I packed his lunches too. I planned Lily's first birthday between conference calls, sewed her costume for the school play during a layover in Denver. I never expected applause. I just thought maybe, someday, they'll remember. When Brian's father passed, I handled the estate paperwork. Brian couldn't stomach it, he said. Grief made him fragile. Max was busy. I arranged the burial plot, handled the obituary, even added the Memorial Scholarship Fund to the company website. Now that same scholarship bears his father's name and not mine, even though it was my idea, my donation, my bank wire. No one asked me before they changed it. No one even told me. But Lily knew. Of course she did. She was there the night I stayed up until 2 a.m. revising the foundation proposal, red pen in one hand, glass of Merlot in the other. She saw the drafts. She watched me build that legacy brick by brick, while the rest of them waited for the ribbon cutting. When I saw the website last month, it hit me like a cold slap. My photo gone, my title gone. The history page now reads, founded by Brian Harper and his son Max, with a vision to build generational success. Generational, as if I were a placeholder, a footnote between father and son. I stared at that screen for a long time. Didn't cry, didn't even blink, just stared. And then I logged into the donor platform, checked the back end, my access revoked, my donation still active, quiet withdrawals every month from the joint account I hadn't bothered to close, auto renewals, auto giving, auto forgetting. I turned them off, not out of spite, out of clarity. There's something sharp about watching people profit from the parts of yourself they forced into silence, something final. Lily once asked me why I stopped baking for the holiday parties. I told her I was tired. The truth was, one year Max made a joke, said my pecan pie tasted like store-brand nostalgia. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. Then I never baked again. Little by little, they chipped at the version of me that built them, until all that remained was a role: mother, ex-wife, benefactor, the scaffolding behind their spotlight, and I accepted it. Because I thought the work would speak for itself. I thought the walls I raised would remember who laid the foundation. But drywall doesn't speak, and legacies, if not defended, get reassigned. Tonight, I sat at that table like a stranger in my own archive. Watched Max retell company origin stories with himself at the center. Watched Brian nod like he believed it. Watched the room agree with a version of history that never existed. Except Lily. She saw me. She remembered. And in that moment, as the room spun around laughter and pumpkin pie, I realized something else. I wasn't erased. I was overwritten. And that's easier to fix. The morning after the holiday dinner, I woke before the sun. The house was too quiet, too clean, the kind of sterile silence that only exists in places where you no longer belong. I made coffee in the guest kitchen, opened my laptop, and logged into the foundation portal for the last time. My name was gone from the public profile, but deep in the archived settings, I still found it listed as previous contributor, non-active. They hadn't deleted me, just demoted me to a ghost. I clicked through old financial statements, saw my donation history stacked line by line, 6 figures over 8 years. Not a cent reimbursed. No acknowledgments. Just silence and fading receipts. I pulled the records, downloaded everything. Then I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it exactly what it was: proof. That same day I called Ethan. He picked up after the second ring, same as always. "Emma," he said. "I was wondering when I'd hear from you again. Ethan and I go back decades. He used to be my financial advisor before I left the firm. Sharp, discreet, allergic to drama. I need a review," I said. "Full audit. Foundations, trusts, joint assets." Quietly. There was a pause. "Who am I protecting you from?" he asked. "Not who," I said. "What?" He didn't ask more. He never does. By 2 p.m., I was at his office, the kind with frosted glass and real espresso. I slid him the flash drive. "Everything's on here. Donations, transfers, property records, scholarship agreements." He plugged it in, browsed for 5 minutes, then leaned back. They gutted your paper trail, he said. Deliberate, methodical, all the markers of a slow, quiet erasure. Except I kept receipts, I replied. Of course you did, he smiled. What Ethan found made my skin go cold. A transfer from the joint donor account to a secondary Shell Foundation Harper Legacy initiative set up 6 months ago, with Max listed as the sole director. Same mission, same programs, same scholarship language, different branding, different bank. They had cloned the work and rebranded it as theirs. The final insult? They'd used my donations to seed the new account. They didn't just erase me, they used me to build my replacement. I stared at the spreadsheet Ethan pulled up, numbers neatly aligned, names scrubbed clean. This isn't just unethical, he said. This is financial misrepresentation. If you want to push, we can go legal. I shook my head. Not yet. First, I want them to feel it. That night, I sat at my own kitchen table, real oak, not veneer, looking out at the garden I planted after the divorce. I opened my old filing cabinet, pulled out the original incorporation documents from the foundation, the deed to the lake house, even the handwritten agreement Brian and I made about using my inheritance to cover the down payment on the business office. He'd written it on hotel stationery, said we didn't need lawyers, we had trust. I scanned everything, backed it up twice, and sent Ethan the files. We start the withdrawals tomorrow, I wrote, and I want to cut the trust lines, every account, every auto pay, every backdoor authorization they think I forgot. He confirmed within the hour. By the next morning, my name was removed from the Legacy Trust. All auto donations canceled. The shared P.O. box I had paid for was closed. My financial fingerprint wiped from every surface they still depended on. I watched each confirmation arrive like clockwork, a reverse ghosting. Then came the first ripple. Max's assistant emailed me with a vague request about an upcoming grant cycle. We just need your usual contribution, she wrote breezily. I didn't reply. That afternoon, I received a group email from the board. Reminder, Q1 disbursements pending. I waited. 3 days. 4. Then quietly, Brian reached out, one line, Emma, we need to talk. I didn't answer. Instead, I sent a final message to Ethan. Freeze all pending fund transfers. If they ask, tell them to check the plaque in the lobby. He didn't reply, but a minute later, I received an auto-forward of a message Max had sent to the building manager. Who approved the plaque removal? The manager responded, Client request, per original founder authorization. My authorization, still active in the file. It was never about money. Not really. It was about memory, about ownership, about who gets to write the story when the storyteller steps out of the room. I didn't step out. I was pushed. Now, I was back. But not to reclaim what was lost. To show them what happens when you build your legacy on someone else's silence and she decides not to stay quiet. On the 5th day of silence, Max called. Twice. I let both go to voicemail. His message was short. There's a problem with the disbursement schedule. We need your authorization. Can we meet? He sounded calm, rehearsed, like he hadn't spent the last year rewriting history with a smile and a legal pad. I didn't answer. Instead, I waited until the following Monday, the day the Harper Legacy Initiative was scheduled to release its quarterly grants, and revoked the last remaining signatory privilege they didn't know I still held. Ethan made it official with a single e-signature. The system flagged the change immediately. Their operating account froze within 6 hours. At 8:17 p.m. that night, Brian showed up at my door. He didn't knock right away. I watched from the kitchen window as he paced the front step, coat collar up, holding something in his hand, a manila folder. Always a folder. When he finally rang the bell, I didn't flinch. Just opened the door and waited. Emma, he started. This is unnecessary. I looked at the folder. Is that the new story? Or the old one you're trying to salvage? He exhaled. Look, I know you're upset. We should have handled the transition differently, but this is overkill. You're hurting the foundation. I leaned against the doorframe. Number, I'm protecting it. From you. He handed me the folder. Inside were printed emails, spreadsheets, lists of pending grants. We're going to miss deadlines. People are counting on us. On you. I flipped through the pages. Their names weren't on anything, just mine. Then maybe you shouldn't have erased the person they were counting on. He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already done listening. Tell Max, I said, that he doesn't get to inherit a legacy he tried to steal. Then I closed the door. Quietly. Finally. 2 days later, the first cracks appeared publicly. A grant recipient tweeted that their funding hadn't arrived. Then a partner clinic announced delays. Then a local paper ran a short piece titled, "Where did the Harper funds go?" I didn't speak. I didn't post. I didn't correct or clarify. I just let the vacuum speak for itself. But Max, he panicked. I knew he would. At 11:03 a.m., he texted, "Emma, please. We need to meet. We can fix this." I sent no reply. At 2:17 p.m., he emailed, "At least tell me what you want." That one made me pause. Not because I didn't have an answer, but because it was the first time he'd asked. The truth? I didn't want revenge. I wanted honesty. I wanted acknowledgement. But those were currencies they'd never learned to trade in. So I gave them the only thing they respected: consequence. That weekend, Lily came over. She brought pastries and her laptop, said she wanted to help. "You don't have to fix this for me," I told her. She shrugged. "I'm not. I'm fixing it for you." We sat side by side, scrolling through old press releases, board documents, emails I'd archived in a private inbox just in case. "You saved all this?" she asked. I nodded. "They always said I had control issues. Turns out I just knew they'd try to take what wasn't theirs." She smiled, the soft, grim kind that carries both pride and grief. "I'm glad you kept receipts." The next move was mine, and I made it without noise. Ethan filed the necessary paperwork to dissolve my remaining stake in the Harper Legacy Initiative. I pulled my name, my contributions, and my image from all affiliated materials. Then we submitted formal notice to the grant board that the original founder had withdrawn endorsement, citing breach of intent. The legal language was surgical, clean, and brutal. The fallout came fast. 3 board members resigned. 2 donors paused their commitments. A background investigation revealed the shell entity Max had created used misleading language, copied directly from my original filings. It was enough to prompt an internal audit. Then came the email. From Max. Subject line, "I'm sorry." He wrote about pressure, about expectations, about wanting to make his father proud. He said he never meant to erase me, that it was Brian's idea to rename the foundation, that he just wanted to be taken seriously. "I see now," he wrote, "how wrong it was. You built all of this, and we just assumed you'd always be there." I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to anymore. His realization wasn't for me. It was for him. The apology came too late and too conveniently, timed right when his access began slipping. But what struck me most wasn't the email, it was the line he ended on. "I think I finally understand what legacy really means." Oh! It wasn't about nameplates or press releases. It was about the stories people carry in your absence. And for the first time, I realized I hadn't lost mine. I had just stopped lending it out. It took less than a week for the whispers to turn into static. The foundation's site went offline for maintenance. The official Facebook page disabled comments. Brian posted a carefully worded statement about organizational restructuring and realignment of values. It read like damage control wrapped in corporate jargon. But the calls didn't stop. Max tried 3 more times, once from a new number, as if changing the ringtone would change the past. I didn't answer. The silence was intentional now, tactical. On the 4th morning, a bouquet showed up at my doorstep, white lilies, a card tucked inside with just 4 words. "Please don't do this. No signature." I threw them out. Then came the escalation. A voicemail from Brian, voice tight, practiced. "Emma, you're hurting more than just us. There are people depending on these funds. You've made your point. Now can we be reasonable?" I replayed the message once, then deleted it. The same afternoon, Lily forwarded me a screenshot from a family group chat she'd been re-added to without warning. A message from Brian, trying to spin the story. "Emma's going through something. We should give her space." I stared at the words. Going through something. As if grief or stolen credit were a mental illness. As if claiming what was mine meant I'd become irrational. But that was the thing, they weren't used to me claiming anything. For decades I had been the background, the support beam, the one who smiled politely through being overlooked. They had grown dependent on that version of me, and now that she was gone, they were flailing. Not because they missed me, but because they missed the benefits of my silence. The phone buzzed again. This time it was an email from a former grant recipient, a small clinic in Kansas. The director wrote, We heard what happened. We just want to say thank you. Your work changed lives. We never believed the Harper name carried it alone. I read it 3 times, then once more just to feel it sink in. Someone remembered. That night, I went into the garage and opened an old filing box marked 2007 Buys Originals. Inside were the first drafts of the Foundation's mission statement. Handwritten. Red ink across legal pads. My notes. My edits. My late nights etched into the margins. I scanned the pages into a fresh folder. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but I knew they belonged to me. By Friday, the panic turned public. A journalist from a nonprofit watchdog group reached out. She'd been tracking inconsistencies in the Harper Foundation's filings. Wanted to know if I'd comment. I didn't say yes. But I didn't say no either. I forwarded her Ethan's contact instead. The next morning, my neighbor stopped me outside. "I saw the news," she said quietly. "That was your name, wasn't it? The original founder?" I nodded. She paused, looked down, then added, "I always thought so. You were the only one I ever saw working late." It was such a simple sentence, but it hit harder than any apology. Visibility, after all, was all I'd ever wanted. That weekend, I received another envelope in the mail. Handwritten, no return address. Inside was a letter, this time from Max. Longer than the last, no excuses. Just lines that finally acknowledged what he'd taken. "I thought I could carry the brand," he wrote. "But I didn't understand what carrying meant. You weren't just the name, you were the foundation." Still, I didn't respond. Because this wasn't about him finding closure. This was about me finding freedom. I walked into the guest bedroom that night, the one where Lily used to sleep during long exam weekends. I opened the closet, pulled out the old corkboard she once used to pin her study notes. I dusted it off, took a tack, and pinned the printed copy of the mission statement I wrote in 2007. Just the first line, my handwriting still sharp. To build with care what others forget to preserve. That was the legacy. Not the money, not the board meetings, not even the building that now tried to erase me. It was the intention. And intentions, when rooted in truth, can't be stolen, only ignored, until they bloom again. It was the second Sunday of January when the invitation arrived. Cream envelope, gold trim, no handwriting, just my name, machine printed, sterile. Inside, an embossed card with the Harper Foundation's new branding. "We invite you to our annual Founders Gala, celebrating a decade of impact and legacy." Legacy. The word sat there like a bruise. No note, no apology, no signature, just an assumption. That I would show up, that I would dress up, that I would smile politely while they toasted the history they stole. I placed the card on the kitchen counter, poured coffee, and didn't touch it again. Lily came by that afternoon. She spotted the envelope and raised an eyebrow. "You going?" she asked. I shook my head. "I've been to enough costume parties." She didn't press, just nodded and sat beside me. She brought a folder, this time her own. Inside were letters, emails from grant recipients, clients, small nonprofits, people who remembered who started it all. She read a few out loud. A woman in Ohio who named her newborn after a nurse funded through one of our grants. A teenager from Arizona who was now in med school. All of them thanking me. Not the brand, not the name, me. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "You don't need their podium, Mom. You already have a legacy." The day of the gala came and went. I didn't attend, but I heard about it. The catering was delayed. The keynote speaker canceled last minute. A donor asked about the missing founder. Someone posted a photo of the event. It showed Brian at the podium, smiling too wide, Max off to the side, holding a plaque with their names etched in gold. The caption read, "Carrying on tradition." I didn't comment. I didn't share. I just closed the tab and went back to my work. Later that week, I received a message from a woman named Camille. She had been the foundation's operations manager 5 years ago before Max pushed her out. "I heard what happened," she wrote. "If you're building something new, I'd like to be part of it." That same evening, 2 former board members reached out as well. Quietly, discreetly, people were beginning to notice the cracks. And the person missing from the frame. I didn't rush. I didn't plot. I just started small. A new LLC, a different name, no family ties, no inherited weight, just purpose. I opened a modest office 2 towns over. Lily helped set up the first grant cycle. Camille came on as administrator. We didn't make noise. We didn't send press releases. We just got to work. Meanwhile, word spread. Not from me, but from those who remembered. Former partners forwarded our info. Small organizations reached out. One even asked if this was the real one, the one Emma built. I smiled when I read that. Not because I needed the credit, but because it meant the truth had survived. 3 weeks after the gala, Brian emailed. "We'd like to have a conversation," he wrote. "There's confusion we'd like to clear up." I left it unread. Max tried once more too. "Things aren't the same without you." No, I thought. They're finally honest. For once, I wasn't the invisible hand making sure things didn't fall apart, and they were learning what that felt like. Lily came over again that weekend. She brought coffee and a small gift. A framed copy of the mission statement, my handwriting, carefully reprinted. "You should hang it in the new office," she said. I did, right by the door. First thing people see when they enter. Not out of pride, but as a reminder, that legacy isn't built from applause. It's built from intention, repeated, sustained, and protected. That night, I received one more envelope. No return address. Inside, a letter. Short, from Brian. His handwriting neat, stiff, like it had been drafted a dozen times. "We made mistakes. I see that now. I see what we lost. I hope one day you'll forgive us. Or at least, let us remember you properly." I read it once, then again, then placed it in the drawer, beneath the old drafts and newspaper clippings. I didn't burn it, but I didn't frame it either. Some things don't need a response. Silence, after all, can be its own kind of justice. By mid-February, the Harper Foundation lost its largest corporate sponsor, quietly, without statement. Just a line on a tax record, and then their logo vanished from the website. A week later, one of the partner clinics announced it would not be renewing its service contract. The press picked up the story first, as a blip, then as a pattern. "Shifts in funding," the headline said. "Leadership questions." The reporters never mentioned my name. They didn't need to. The absence was its own statement. I watched it unfold from a distance, not with vengeance, but with stillness. Some mornings I'd check the nonprofit database, see the updates, board members stepping down, delayed disbursements. An open letter from a former recipient group expressing concern about directional drift. It wasn't chaos, not yet, but it was erosion, a slow unraveling of something built too hastily on borrowed credit. Max tried to hold it together. He launched a social media campaign about fresh beginnings, rolled out new branding, new slogans, even hired a PR consultant who once worked for a bottled water company. But the core was cracked. And you can't rebrand integrity. You either have it, or you've proven you don't. Meanwhile, the new initiative Lily and I launched was growing. Small, steady, sharp. We didn't take out ads. We didn't pitch to the press. But people came. Volunteers from the old network. Recipients who remembered. Funders who wanted transparency, not theatrics. Camille oversaw the books. I kept the mission close. Lily managed the outreach. Every dollar was documented. Every story honored. One afternoon, Camille forwarded me an email. It was from the same clinic that had cut ties with Harper. They wanted to join our new pilot program. The subject line said simply, "We know who built this." I stared at those 6 words longer than I needed to. Then, in March, a letter arrived. Not typed, not stamped, handwritten, from Max. "I'm resigning," it began. No preamble, no dramatics. He admitted what they'd done, how they'd sidelined me, how they thought I would stay quiet, because I always had. "But you weren't silent," he wrote. "You were just waiting until you didn't have to explain anymore." He said he was stepping away to rebuild himself. Not the brand, himself. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't redemption, but it was honest. Maybe for the first time. He ended with a line I didn't expect. "If you ever need help, I'll be where you can find me. This time, I'll be the one taking notes." I didn't respond. Not yet. But I placed the letter in the drawer beside Brian's, not because I planned to revisit them, but because I wanted to remember the tone. Not just what was said, but how it sounded when people finally realized the cost of pretending someone didn't matter. Brian, I heard, had stepped back too. His name was no longer listed on the board filings. The foundation hadn't made a public statement in weeks. Their last newsletter was 3 sentences long, no updates. Just a vague promise to reassess our mission. And in a way, they were telling the truth. They were reassessing it because now they had no one left to write it for them. The new office we opened didn't have marble floors or branded banners. Just soft light, clean desks, and a corkboard by the door. The mission statement still hung there, same one I wrote in 2007. We hadn't changed a word. One evening I stayed late, reviewing grant applications. Lily was across from me, sipping tea, laptop open. Camille had already gone home. Outside, snow was starting to fall. Slow, silent, soft. I looked up at Lily and said, "Do you think they ever really saw me?" She didn't hesitate. "No," she said, "but now they do, and they can't unsee it." That night, I walked out into the snow without a coat. Just stood there for a while, letting it land in my hair, my sleeves. The quiet wrapped around me like something earned. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just still. They thought I would crumble. Instead, I simply stepped aside, and the structure they built on my silence followed. I made coffee slowly that morning, not because I was tired, but because I could. No meetings, no voicemails waiting to be returned, no inbox screaming urgency, just the quiet hum of the kettle, the clink of the spoon, and the sunlight spilling onto the counter in long, unhurried stripes. I didn't check my bank app while it brewed. I didn't scan for late payments or flagged accounts. For the first time in over 20 years, everything was paid, clean, accounted for. My name was mine again, no longer buried beneath theirs, no longer stretched across obligations they never thanked me for. I drank my coffee by the window, watching frost melt slowly from the edges of the glass. Later, I replaced the sheets in the guest room. Forest green. Crisp. New. No one else chose the color. No one else needed to. I folded the old ones, not because they were ruined, but because they were tired, like I had been. A different kind of worn. I boxed them up, labeled them spare, and slid the box into the hallway closet beside old photo albums and backup light bulbs. Closure doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it's just a labeled box and a shelf that finally fits everything it needs to. That afternoon, another envelope arrived. Pale blue this time. The ink on the front spelled my name in neat cursive. Inside was a wedding invitation from Max. Not his wedding, someone else's. A cousin's daughter, the kind I hadn't seen since she was 7, all knees and glitter glue. The card didn't say much. Just the event details and a single note scribbled in the corner. "Hope you'll come. They'd like to see you. So would I." I stared at the invitation for a long moment, then placed it on the kitchen table. I didn't reply. I didn't throw it away either. I let it sit there for a while. Then, quietly, I dropped it in the bin. There was nothing cruel in it, no triumph, just the clarity of knowing when something no longer belongs to you. And more importantly, when you no longer owe yourself to it. Later that night, I lit a candle. Not for grief, not for ceremony, just for stillness. The flame wavered, calm and quiet, as I sat beside it with a book I'd been meaning to read for years. I didn't hear my phone buzz, because the silence wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't punishment. It was space. Space I had carved out with intention. Space I had reclaimed inch by inch. In the new office, Camille had installed a bulletin board by the break room. People started pinning things to it, notes from grant recipients, thank you cards, scribbled mission ideas, even doodles from volunteers' kids. One note in pencil read, "Thank you for seeing us when others didn't." Lily had tacked it up. She said it reminded her of something I used to say when she was little. Everyone wants to be seen, not praised, just seen. And I suppose that's all I ever really wanted. Not applause, not revenge. Just acknowledgement, the kind that doesn't arrive too late, or only when the structure starts to crumble. They tried to rewrite the story, but the truth stayed intact, not because I shouted, but because I documented, remembered, survived. When people asked where the original mission went, the real one, the quiet one, they found it in the way we answered emails on time, in the transparency of our books, in the way we didn't speak in slogans, but in promises we kept. The Harper Foundation still exists, in name, in website form, but people don't say much about it anymore. The impact reports stopped being published. Their annual gala went virtual, then disappeared altogether. Brian doesn't speak publicly now. Max, I heard, moved out of state. I don't track them. I don't need to. Their silence isn't mine to carry anymore. One morning, Lily asked me if I ever missed it, the old structure, the recognition, the applause. I thought about it, really thought. Then I shook my head. No, I said. I miss who I was trying to be, but not the people I had to disappear to become her. She nodded. She understood. She always had. That weekend, I bought a small ceramic plaque from a local artist. It was unglazed, rough around the edges, shaped like a house. Etched into it were 4 simple words. You built this quietly. I placed it on the shelf above the coffee maker, next to the framed mission statement. Not as a reminder of what I lost, but of what I chose not to lose again. They thought I was lost. But I was never theirs to lose.